Naturally enough, I think that everybody thinks that the place where they live is at some time depressing, but by and large, no, I don't. I think the humour is there. I appreciate the peculiar type of humour of the Black Country, so to me, there's always something worthwhile.
A 100 years ago, Sunday was the only day when the sky over the Black Country was free from smoke. Queen Victoria asked for the blinds of her carriage to be drawn when she passed through. Its landscape and its people have been forged out of the furnace of its own history. Even today, for people who live in other places, the Black Country is still a dark, ugly, industrial sprawl. There's some confusion generally about where it is. There are even Midlanders who are under the impression it's something to do with the potteries. They should know better. After all, it was the birthplace and the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. Yet Black Country people born and bred will argue fiercely about its boundaries. We should set that straight.
The boundaries of the Black Country can be very strictly defined. The Black Country consists of, first of all, the exposed coalfield, the area where the coal lies near the surface. The exposed coalfield consists of Wednesbury, Darlaston, Willenhall, Wentzfield, Bilston, Coseley, Tipton, Dudley, and the area the other side of the Dudley Hill, down towards Netherton, and it peters out towards Halesowen. Add to this the area where the coal lies deeper, the concealed coalfield, you get West Bromwich, Albury and Smethwick. Now this collection of towns forms the Black Country. The towns on the outside of the Black Country, that is Wolverhampton, Walsall and Brummagem, are commercial centres and strictly speaking are not part of the Black Country.
In the Middle Ages, the Black Country was an agricultural region in Staffordshire and Worcestershire, well forested with primitive coal mining and iron smelting here and there. It hadn't earned its grim nickname. It came for the most part under the jurisdiction of St Mary's Abbey at Halesowen, owned at one time by the Bishop of Winchester, along with 5 manors, a few settlements, and tithes from Walsall, Wednesbury and Clent. The bishop was sitting on some pretty exciting real estate. A broad coal seam, 30 feet deep, abundant iron ore and lime, a brooding volcano. There's very little left now from those early centuries. Occasionally, timbered relics from the past show themselves to us, looking rather mystified at remaining unscathed, like buildings which survived the Blitz. Evidence of the 19th century workers, where they lived, who they were, is becoming hard to find. About 250 years ago, the first black omens occurred. The first machine powered by steam, industry revolutionized. In a very short time, the belly of the land was ripped open for the Caesarean birth of the Industrial Revolution. Once its black heart had been slapped into life, there was no stopping it. If you don't know what hard work is, you're looking at it now. These are the men of Cradley Heath and Quarry Bank. They're making hand-forged chains, one of the Black Country's most famous products. Herbert Davis is the chainmaker on the left. His mate, with the 12-pound hammer, is the chain striker Gerald Billingham. They're a finely tuned team, and either would find it hard to work efficiently with somebody else. They start at 4 in the morning, as Herbert Davis says, before the heat of the day comes upon them. Apart from a corrugated iron roof over their heads, they're open to all weathers. There's a fan to cool them off, and a cold water trough to take the fierce heat out of their irons. By 10:30, they're finished for the day, having made 90 links of 1.5-inch chain, 45 feet in length, or 7.5 fathoms of anchor chain. They've worked harder in one morning than many men would in a month. Herbert Davis is 40. He works as hard as he does because he likes it. He scorns weaker men. Somebody once wrote a romantic little song about the chainmakers. It doesn't quite fit with Herbert Davis.
As long as the smoke goes upward, so long will I love you, dear. All day long amid the factory's din, I'm longing to have you near. I can see your face in the firelight as I look at the glowing heat, and the sound of each blow on the anvil seems to ring out your name so sweet.
Mrs. Hannah Baker's 90. She was born when the Black Country's fame as an industrial empire, its air choked with black smoke 6 days a week, was at its height. Her little house in Tipton still has its original grate and no electricity. Mrs. Baker's lived in it for 63 years, at the end of a red brick terraced row well over 100 years old. The houses are condemned. Sometime soon they'll be knocked down. Unfortunately, from the outside anyway, compared with some of their modern equivalents, they've almost assumed a glow of warm, friendly antiquity. Hannah Baker married, as a pretty young woman, with Victoria still on the throne. She's lived for 90 years with the thunder of industry in her everyday life.
Well, I remember the canal. I was just married then. The canal bursted, Burntree. Barnett's backyard, he drained it out of Burntree. I remember the Earl's furnaces going. The coal used to come down on the big trucks down the incline, down to the Earl's work, from their pits. Well, then there's the pits over the road there. There was all pits along there. Gardens on the top of it. And then they started to build about 40 years, I dare say now, since they started to build over the road there. They were all fields. They used to have the big hayrick right opposite here. I remember that because I used to take the tea when they come from school in the field. I used to watch them over there. I know they were all safe then. The furnaces, like the sky, all looked beautiful. It used to nice and light till 12 and 1 o'clock. But now it's dark at 7. You used to have a nice daylight. I've been sitting on the steps outside here all hours. Especially when that was the pub next door. I used to come and sit there, a lot of people. I used to been out there lovely nights. You see nothing of that now, though. The people are not the same on half of them today. Where you used to mix up together and do anything to anybody, they wouldn't do it today for you. I used to bake for a neighbour next door to me up in the other house when she was confined. She used to bake for me. We used to do it for one another. We didn't want paying. But we hadn't got no money to pay at them days. 18 shillings a week. Your husband would have a shilling out to buy a bit of baccy. You got 1 and 6 a week for your bit of furniture. So I'll leave you to guess what you got to spend then in the house, but everything was cheaper and better. We were happy with it. Yes, we were happy.
It's no use pretending that these scenes today behind the terraced row are desirable. But these back courts are where Mrs. Baker lived in a friendly, neighbourly community. She and her husband, Bill, raised their 7 children here, and Bill and his friends would always be ready to share a couple of bob in the public. Before long, there'll hardly be a trace of these people left.
But the Black Country has always been a changing region. It changed from being an agricultural region to one of mining, ironstone and coal and limestone. It changed from a mining region to an iron-making region. It changed from an iron-making region to an engineering region. The essential thing is industry has always been there. This is the main thing we must look at. We must not expect to see that the old things will always be preserved. Things will change because the industries must change with them. if the Black Country is to remain an important part of the world's industrial centres, then the Black Country must always change. What will happen, though, is that the Black Country will retain its essential characteristic of being a unique, inward-looking, rather almost isolated area.
Without any major rivers or roads running through it, the Black Country was isolated from the markets it needed. They cut canals to the outside world. The cost of Black Country coal in Birmingham fell by half, but they were killed off by the railways. Attempts to make canal transport an economic proposition in the middle of the 20th century haven't been very successful. If you look under the old bridges, you'll probably see the grooves worn deep in the walls where the barge ropes and cables cut. By the lock gates, the decaying mooring bollards, almost severed by use. At canal junctions where they crossed over the bridges, there are the shallow scoops in the brick cobbles where the horses struggled for a grip. At a few places there are still the old stables or staging posts where the horses were housed and fed. But now they've gone.
Little beauty we had in Wednesbury at one time, such as the green fields and the meadows and the lochs, they've all gone.
Especially when the furnaces were around, you know, and all those sort of places. I think the Black Country did stand out at that time, but of course now they've closed everything down and that's it.
In 1966, the Black Country, with its fiercely independent local authorities and town halls managing their own affairs, was parcelled up by Act of Parliament into 5 county boroughs. There was a lot of opposition.
The reason for this, of course, is that the Black Countryman, even today, is very proud of his own separate small community. People in an area are proud of their town, they're proud of coming from Wednesbury, they're proud of coming from Darlington or Bilston or Cradley, whatever it might be. They're also proud of coming from an area, Kings Hill, Mestercroft in Wednesbury, are proud of coming from a street or an estate. They're conscious of belonging to a small group of people. Why, even today, if you marry somebody from a different part of the Black Country, people often say, oh, he's gone out of the area, he's married a foreigner. He's gone over to the other side, as it were. And perhaps the person is marrying somebody from only half a mile away. In this boundary dispute, the trouble, because a town like West Bromwich, a modern town, an 18th century town, taking over an old town like Wednesbury, a medieval town, people felt that Wednesbury ought to be proud of itself and should not be absorbed by this 18th century monstrosity that they call West Bromwich.
Well, I think it's all right, you know, myself, because I've always lived here all my life, eh?
Well, it isn't as clean as some places, I admit. I mean, I like the country, but I like it here as well.
Where's the smoke and the dirt and the grit? I mean, you can clean your windowsills in the morning and the next morning they're there thick again.
Well, Wednesbury ain't much to look at the moment, is it? West Bromwich is all right. I don't keen on Wednesbury, because it all wants doing, don't it, because of the buildings.
They knock a lot of facilities down and buildings, and they seem to go up in place of them quick enough.
I don't know, there are far worse places, aren't there, than here, after all said and done. Yes, and we can get out to the country easily. Just get in the car, 10 minutes ride, and we're in the country.
I mean, when they say that we're in the Black Country, they think of dirty chimney, smoking and dirty factories and that. But, I mean, we're not here.
I'd rather come from here than anywhere.
It'll be surprising if the strange, independent character of the Black Countryman disappears. Not when there are men like Joe Mallon around, publican, chainmaker, and general tough nut. Joe Mallon bred the first world champion Staffordshire Bull Terrier, Gentleman Jim. While Joe made chains, Gentleman Jim watched. Joe Mallon's list of champion dogs and fighting dogs makes formidable reading. His Staffordshire Bull Terriers and their offspring won honours at Crufts and in international show rings. But Joe Mallon's also seen his dogs fight desperate battles for high stakes in the cellar under the pub.
I want to tell you this. I have definitely seen a lot of it. But I've never seen no cruelty in all my life. I've heard them talk about they tear dogs to pieces. Now, I've never seen it. I've seen Henry Cooper in the ring served out more than I've seen at Stafford. If a man seen his dog being knocked about too much, he'd throw the sponge in. This dog, he belongs to George Edge from Craigleith, the Vine, Craigleith. And he's a smashing Staffordshire Bull Terrier, in my eye. He's got a wonderful pair of ears. He's got a black nose, he's got a dark eye. But he's just a little bit too heavy for show according to the rules. But he has won a few prizes, firsts and seconds in that. There's one good thing about him here. He's got a wonderful mouth. He's not undershot. If you get a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, which is undershot, it points against him very much. Now, this dog has got one of the best mouths that you would see on a Stafford. See? And his ears, 100%, neck, as hard as a bullet, and he's well, you can tell by the look of him, he's as strong as a cart horse. And I should say, if this dog had got a fight in a battle, he's 6 pound overweight, 6 pound. You could get 6 pound out of this dog. George, will you hold this dog a bit? Well, I tell my friend, if this is how they fight these dogs. Now, supposing that's your dog, and that's mine. Yeah. There's a referee in the pit. There's two players. The player, one in one corner, one in the other. They toss for corners. And the referee, and there's a man the other side with a bottle of water and a sponge, like his second. And one in the other, just outside the pit, with a bottle of water and a sponge. And the referee, he calls time. Loose your dogs. So loose the dogs and they start fighting. They'll fight for a quarter of an hour or 20 minutes or something like that, and they'll come off through exhaustion. I remember the Craigleith dog fighting a Rowley dog. And I was a spectator at the time, he come off in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a long while, you know. He comes off, and the fellow takes him to his corner. The referee says, time, loose your dog. He loosed him, and he jumped out the pit and ran off up, lost the money. See? Either dog refusing or stopping, he wasn't hurt. See? And I seen one at Surrey. It was for £25 a side, and that lasted just over half an hour. And the same thing happened. The Surrey dog had got to come across, and he refused to come. He dropped down. When the referee called on, he dropped down and was lost the money. See, he refused to come across. Now, you follow me in that, don't you? Do you know, 1 hour after, he mated a bitch.
The Black Countryman's character, slightly belligerent individuality, is reflected in his surroundings, like the ornamental fountain in Dudley Marketplace. His harsh history is suggested in simple but disturbing ways. The pub signs tell their own stories. He has an earthy, sometimes cruel sense of humour.
Well, we were fishing a contest at Hampton Road. There was public there. Well, we went in and had dinner, and this monkey used to dodge about picking bits up, you know. So he happened to drop on me, and they just took the mate out of the oven, so I catched out of the monkey, shoved him in the oven, but you know, he could lick all the pub dancers this time of year. Oh, I shoved him in the oven. They just took the mate out. Well, Dick Watson and Dick Williams, he opened the door and loosed him out, and he went straight up the top of a pear tree. When he stuck there, he wouldn't come down. The missus kept calling him, come on, Billy, but don't matter. Billy was killing his feet off. But that was the best. When we were fishing with peddlers, when we was in Peddlers Club, we was fishing tressage. Well, the side weaver was fishing, the river was up and nobody could fish it. So across the other side was all one big swim, and there was about 30 odd on we. And we all went and fished it. They were only about a yard and a half off one another, you know. And we went up to the Eagles and had our dinner. And coming back, the farmer, he'd loosed the bull in the field. And I says, gentlemen, I've ever seen a rodeo. And I pulled my jacket and waistcoat off and went up to see a bull with a red handkerchief. And I run him all round the field. But there wasn't a man to be seen in a minute. Old ones and young ones, oh, they all run out of the field.
They liked nothing better than crowding together, preferably in a pub. This is grey Pays pudding night in a Braidley public house. The recipe's simple. Grey maple peas, soaked overnight and boiled for 3 hours. Add slices of roast bacon and plenty of salt. Ladle it out, missus, it's all free and no one goes away hungry. Grey Pays pudding makes them thirsty, which is good for business. It also makes them, sing. One of the cruelest but most popular pastimes in the Black Country was cockfighting, which some people will tell you still goes on. In the ancient parish church at Wednesbury, the medieval lectern isn't a traditional eagle, it's a proud fighting cock. It's not certain how old it is or who carved it, but it wasn't unknown for the clergy to join in round the pit near the church for the bloody contests. Large crowds would gather on public holidays like Easter Monday to watch the stags do battle in their steel spurs.
Cockfighting's a cruel sport, there's no question about that. You've got a couple of birds that literally tear each other to pieces. But I think the old Black Country cockers who did a great deal of it, they weren't really sadists, they weren't particularly cruel men. They were pretty unimaginative perhaps, I wouldn't argue about that. But I think that the real reason that they enjoyed cockfighting was that all Black Country folk were very good with animals. They used to like to have the fastest whippet or the farthest flying pigeon or the sweetest singing roller canary or the gamest cock. And the chaps, when they went to the pit, they would take with them funny little boxes and they would produce all sorts of things out of this. Spurs and tatching tape and things to fit over the back to take up any surplus that there was if the spurs were loose. And these spurs, they were made of steel and it was a very skilled job. A lot of the best were made at Bloxwich, in fact, where they used to make awls. And they used to fit these spurs over the natural spurs on the cock, and they used to put little bits of packing in the back so that they fitted precisely and were solid, and then they used to tie them on with this tatching tape. And when all was ready, they used to put them in the pit and start them to fight. Now, it was a tremendous challenge to them to try and breed a good cock, better than anybody else. And the first thing that they used to do when they wanted to try them, they spent 2 years, the first 2 years of their lives, out on farms at walk, as it was called, as chickens and stags. And when they were stags, they used to bring them in and they used to feed them. Now, feeding wasn't just feeding, it was really training as well. But there was a great deal of mystique in this. They fed them with special fighting cock cake, and it had secret recipes of how many bottles of sherry went into it and how many eggs and all sorts of odd things. And I don't know, but I used to think sometimes that the old bloke who was doing it, he took a bite himself, because a lot of those old cockers were certainly pretty fit men. But it didn't consist just of feeding. They had to get them well, as they called them. And the way they used to get them well, they used to get all the surplus flesh off them by giving them as much exercise as a really good boxer would have. And they used to fit on the back of their legs, over their natural spurs, these little boxing gloves. And then they'd pit 2 birds together with the little gloves on them, and they would give them a bit of work, a bit of exercise. In other words, they had to get them matched to very close limits of weight indeed. And this is where the real skill of the feeder came in. He had to get his bird down to his best weight, and when he got him down, he didn't have to take him too far. He had to get him absolutely solid muscle. And the work that they'd done with the gloves, of course, made them pretty keen. And they started them fighting, really, by showing they used to show the 2 faces, and they used to peck at each other, and then they would start to fight absolutely naturally. And if you taxed one of these old cockers with being cruel, he'd say, "You can't make a coward cock fight. He'll jump out of the pit and run away, so how can it be cruel?" Well, of course, it was very cruel indeed, but the other enjoyment they got out of it, there was a tremendous lot of betting. They used to bet often more than they could afford, and there was all the fun of dodging the cops. And they used to set out, if they could, when there was other things going on, the police were busy on a Sunday morning perhaps, or at holiday times, so that the policemen, in fact, didn't get very many convictions, although there was quite a lot of cocking went on right up until the last war.
There's an old rhyme: when Satan stood on Brierley Hill and all around him gazed, he said, "I never more shall feel at hell's fierce flames amazed." The furnaces lit the sky all night, but somehow, through the centuries, the cholera, smoke and grime, a distinct character was hammered out which survived. History, that careless old criminal, has left its fingerprints everywhere. Outsiders who don't have to live there sometimes cultivate romantic feelings about it, more so than those who make their lives in the unbeautiful towns. The dual carriageway between Birmingham and Wolverhampton sweeps travellers through the old black country, unmindful, perhaps, that this was the beginning. The latest surgery is the link system in the opposite direction, between the M1, the M5 and the M6, joining pieces together like massive stitches in a wound. But all those odd little towns will never be married in spirit. There are too many old scars for the most skillful plastic surgery to conceal.
Well, I think it's a thing the young people don't take much notice of, and when you delve into the history of Wednesbury, the biggest tragedy for Wednesbury was when West Bromwich took us over.
I dreamt I was dead and to heaven did go. Where did you come from, they wanted to know. The Black Country, I said. St. Peter did stare. You come right in, you're the first one from there. And again.